Be back. Good morning, everybody. There is a marathon session to repeal and replace Obamacare underway right now on Capitol Hill. They've been at it for more than 20 hours. Overnight, House Republicans finally scoring their first victory in the fight to deliver on their party's signature campaign promise, and that's the Peel Back Obamacare. So that's where we are right now. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Hemmer, live at America's Newsroom. Big show again today. How you doing?
Yeah, listen, I bet a bunch of interns doing coffee runs this morning there on Capitol Hill. I'm Shannon Bremen for Martha McCallum. Republicans putting the pedal to the metal overnight and still working this morning. Vice President Mike Pence is going to hold a series of meetings with Republicans this hour as conservatives continue to sound the alarm, saying more changes are needed.
The president is very proud of the product that we have produced. We're out in full sell mode all around the country talking about how we think this is the best way to solve the problem that the American people face.
Let's do what we told the voters we were going to do. We told them we were going to repeal it and replace it. The Speaker's right, replace it with a plan that's patient-centered. We don't think this one does that. We don't think this one's going to bring down the cost of premiums.
My fear is that under the House plan, Obamacare Light, that the situation continues to get worse. In fact, they admit as much because they put $100 billion in there to bail out the insurance companies.
We are keeping our promises. We're excited about this. We're taking one entitlement, we're defederalizing it, and we're capping it. The other entitlement, we're repealing it and replacing it with Republican conservative tax policy. This is nothing but a win for conservatives.
You think this story is getting hot? Stand by. There's another big story on this one now. The FBI is on the hunt for a CIA leaker, launching a criminal investigation into how WikiLeaks obtained those secret documents. Team Fox coverage starts this morning. John Roberts at the White House for reaction on those two big stories today. Katie Pavlich standing by with analysis, but we start where the action is. Peter Ducey live on Capitol Hill. And Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Even though all Republican lawmakers are not yet on board with this Republican leadership-backed replacement bill, about 40 minutes ago, the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy predicted it will pass the House and move on to the Senate. And last night, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, explained that if things seem kind of disjointed here on Capitol Hill right now, on the right, it's just because leaders here are still getting used to seeing a friendly face down at the White House.
So we are going through what I would call the sort of typical growing pains from being an opposition party fighting Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid to a governing party.
But according to the most outspoken senator opposing the current leadership-backed Obamacare replacement, the Speaker of the House has not been upfront with the president about the number of votes this measure has right now. Senator Rand Paul tells Breitbart, quote, Paul Ryan, I think, is selling it to the White House and telling the White House, oh, it's a piece of cake, it's a done deal. And I don't think that's an accurate depiction of things. At the White House, meanwhile, officials are using the presidential bowling alley to try to pick up Republican support for this replacement measure. The OMB director, Mick Mulvaney, is inviting skeptical Freedom Caucus members to the White House to bowl and eat pizza on Tuesday. It does sound like many of them plan to attend, but across the aisle, Democratic lawmakers are surprised that Republicans still are not on the same page about the American Health Care Act.
Now they have their chance to put something forward, which they do in the dark of night. Do you think in 7 years they could have come up with something better than what they've done?
These marathon markup sessions on the Hill continue. Committees are going line by line. Ways and Means started at 10:30 a.m. yesterday. They went until 4 a.m. this morning. The Energy and Commerce Committee also started at 10:30 a.m. yesterday, and they're still going right now.
Word by word. Thank you, Peter Ducey, setting the table there on the Hill. Thanks, Shannon.
Well, meanwhile, the Trump administration making a major push to get this bill over the finish line. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live at the White House with more on that. Hi, John.
Shannon, good morning to you. The president continues to put the hard sell on the American Health Care Act, meeting last night with conservative groups who stand in staunch opposition to it. People like the Heritage Action Group, Freedom Works, the Club for Growth, a number of other groups, Tea Party Patriots, Americans for Prosperity. Those groups are critical of the AHCA, calling it, quote, Obamacare Light, a warmed-over substitute for government-run health care. Ryan Care also saying that it is bad policy. The health secretary Tom Price this morning saying, well, you know, some of the things that those groups are worried about not being in the bill, things like the ability to negotiate for lower drug prices, the ability to sell insurance across state lines, are not in what he calls phase one of the bill. Phase one of the bill, because it's a reconciliation bill, can only do with taxing and spending, and that's what they're dealing with right now. He said those things will all come further down the road, and he does believe that conservatives will get on board with it. Listen to this here.
I believe it's going to pass. I do, because we're working with every single person, trying to address the concerns that they have. I've had meetings in the past 2 weeks, got more meetings this week and today. Met with the governors the last weekend when they were in town. So we're trying to address all of those issues in a positive way, again, so that we get to patient-centered health care.
The health secretary says he is going to be at that bowling party on Tuesday, by the way, that the OMB director, Mick Mulvaney, is hosting for the Freedom Caucus. So that is a clear indication that in addition to the budget, which is really what Mulvaney called that bowling party for, they will be talking about health care as well. Meantime, on the other big story, the theft of cyber spying tools from the CIA, the White House continues to not talk about this at all, not confirming whether or not that hack happened. But yesterday at the briefing, Sean Spicer saying, of course, the president does remain very concerned about these leaks of classified information that he says could harm national security. The press secretary also appeared to contradict himself yesterday. He was asked if the president was the target of a wiretapping operation. Spicer at first said that's what they want the intelligence committees to find out. And then after he was handed a note by an aide, appeared to do a 180 on the whole thing. Watch how this unfolded.
That's what we need to find out. There's obviously a lot of concern, and there is no reason to believe that he's the target of any investigation. I think that's a very important point to make. And so, no, it doesn't. What I'm saying is, hold on. The one question dealt with whether or not the tweet dealt with wiretaps during the thing. The other is an investigation. They are two separate issues. And there is no reason to believe that there is any type of investigation with respect to the Department of Justice.
Now, one former advisor from the Trump campaign who was involved in a couple of meetings last year thinks that he may have connected some of the dots here. Carter Page has sent a couple of letters to the Intelligence Committee saying he believes because of his peaceful relationship with the Russians that he was the target of wiretapping. And because his office was right behind Trump Tower and he was often in Trump Tower, that may explain some of what the president was talking about in terms of there being wiretaps at Trump Tower. All of this, hopefully, Shannon, will come out in the Intelligence Committee investigation.
Well, it is ongoing and just really revving up. John Roberts at the White House, thank you.
So for more on all this analysis, Katie Pavlich, news editor, townhall.com, and a Fox News contributing. Katie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Start on those CIA leaks. Where does this go, if anywhere?
Well, the Wall Street Journal is reporting this morning that the CIA is likely going to be looking at independent contractors rather than government staff on this specific issue, which means essentially they're looking for Edward Snowden 2.0. And as we know, Edward Snowden left the country. And so this could be a saga to come, and I'm sure that it will be. In terms of what the White House is saying on this issue, as John Roberts reported, they're not specifically commenting on whether this is a valid leak, whether it's an authentic leak. However, they are saying that the leakers will be pursued, that they will be criminally prosecuted, and that there have to be consequences for this, which means that they're taking a harsh stand on it now, so hopefully they can prevent it in the future.
What are you suggesting? It not an authentic leak? What other possibility would there be?
Well, essentially, there isn't really any other possibility, but the White House has been very careful not to validate the fact that these are our tactics in order to try and put a Band-Aid on this idea that now the world knows and Americans know what our tactics are, specifically referring to hacking into iPhones, using smart TVs to listen in on conversations. The CIA is trying to say that they do not use these tactics against American citizens, but as we saw with the NSA leak last time around with Snowden, that caused a lot of controversy and congressional investigations into what exactly those tactics were and what the process was for making sure that Americans weren't the target of these unauthorized, warrantless investigations.
All right, topic number 2, Obamacare. You asked Sean Spicer yesterday, what is non-negotiable for President Trump? That was your question. What was the answer?
Well, Secretary Price earlier this week was in the briefing room saying that the Obamacare bill on the table, literally beside him, was just a starting point. And last night, as we know, President Trump had a few conservative leaders at the White House. Ted Cruz had dinner with him, which means there's a lot of negotiation that's going to happen. And moving forward here, this is going to happen in 3 different parts, which means that the beginning bill that we have might look a lot different than the end bill. President Trump is a negotiator. They are saying that he's out to sell this thing to the American people and to those on Capitol Hill who are skeptical. However, he is open to new ideas to try to get this thing through. And Bill, I want to emphasize this idea that, the Tea Party movement is still alive and well in the sense that they worked very hard for many, many years, knocking on doors, getting candidates that could win to repeal Obamacare. They face targeting from the IRS over their efforts to repeal Obamacare. They're not going to sit down and take this lightly. They have a rally next week in Washington, D.C. I'm sure a lot of people will be there. They're going to hold Republicans accountable, including the White House, for making sure that this bill cuts costs and actually repeals Obamacare in full instead of being Obamacare 2.0.
As you pointed out, the pushback is real, very, very real, as you have said. Thank you, Katie. Katie Pat was their analysis in D.C. Later today, 3 o'clock, I do believe, Mike Pompeo, head of the CIA, Secretary Kelly, head of DHS, they meet with the president today. So on the agenda, immigration and also these leaks.
To be a fly on the wall in that meeting.
Yeah,
it's close to the press, surprisingly, so we're not going to get any readout from that, I don't think. Not much. All right, well, this is one of our top stories of the day. House lawmakers burning the midnight oil on repealing Obamacare. A marathon session continues right now on Capitol Hill. This one started at 10:30 a.m. yesterday. One of the top Republicans working on that bill just stepped out of that room to join us. There he is. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise is up next.
Also, Shannon, is President Trump's tough talk on immigration now paying off? A new report that the number of those illegally entering the U.S. is dropping and dropping fast. We'll tell you what we know about that.
And U.S. Marines now officially on the ground in Syria as the Trump administration ramps up efforts to destroy ISIS. Retired 4-star General Jack Keane is here.
We will work with our allies, including our friends and allies in the Muslim world, to extinguish this vile enemy from our planet.
People, families have the freedom to choose the health care plan that they like. That's the ultimate freedom in health care. Now, maybe some people don't view that as freedom because they don't think people should be able to make that choice for themselves. And there's clearly a philosophical difference we have. But you know what? If those are the 2 definitions of freedom, I'm going to be on the side of giving families the freedom to choose their own plan, not saying you have to go through some unelected bureaucrat.
So that's the House Majority Whip, Steve Scalise, moments ago on the Hill. Remember, all-nighter still goes on now. And, many conservatives still balking, saying it doesn't actually repeal the health law, doesn't bring down costs. There's a concern. That all-nighter still underway. Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise just popped out of that hearing, and he's with me now. Sir, good morning to you, and thank you for making time. We want to let our viewers know what's been happening there. Just what did happen overnight with substance, sir?
Good morning, Bill. Look, it's been a full almost 24 hours now that we've been battling on this bill that we have to gut Obamacare. And, anybody that wants to know what is really at stake here, just look at the battle we've had throughout the night, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, amendments going back and forth. Every Democrat on our committee is against this bill because they acknowledge it gets rid of Obamacare. And so that's what's at stake here. And look, we're going to get this done, but just look what Obamacare has done to destroy health care in America. And there's been a lot of revisionist history from my Democrat colleagues last night who almost wanted to act like Obamacare has done wonderful things for families. It's lowered costs. All of those lies that we heard over the last 8-9 years, we had to remind everybody just what this law has done to real families, how it's devastated health care, how it's raised premiums, skyrocketing costs. Deductibles, families are paying over $10,000.
We've heard that. Just in the interest of time, I just want to cut through a couple things here, okay? You may not get any Democratic support on this, and you're getting a lot of pushback from the Freedom Caucus. Mark Meadows from North Carolina was on our air yesterday. He said the following, and I want you to answer that next. Watch.
If you just look at the bill text, the very first paragraph says it amends the Affordable Care Act. It doesn't repeal it. And so the American people want us to repeal it and replace it with something that is different.
Well, okay, now what are you saying to them?
That's similar text, what we passed 2 years ago. We put a bill on Barack Obama's desk that guts Obamacare. Now, by the way, we've passed a full repeal bill to the Senate multiple times. They've never been able to get the votes to pass it. So we're going through the budget reconciliation process, which means with 51 votes, you can actually get that bill to the president's desk. And we got a bill to Barack Obama's desk that gutted the law. And so we're going to move through a similar process, do some of those same things. And oh, by the way, we also defund groups like Planned Parenthood that use taxpayer money and provide
so we are told this comes in 3 phases. Is this technically phase number 1 then?
That's correct. Okay. That's the things that need 51 votes in the Senate, not 60.
When this hearing breaks, what will you have officially accomplished?
We will have moved a bill through both the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Ways and Means Committee that starts the complete unraveling of Obamacare. We zero out the penalty on the individual mandate, zero out the penalty on the employer mandate, expand health savings accounts, give real freedom to families so they get to choose their doctor. They don't have to go through Washington and some unelected bureaucrat. Those are dramatic changes. We also transform the Medicaid program and actually give states the ability and the flexibility to run that program and control costs in Medicaid. That's going to save hundreds of billions of dollars to the taxpayer. So there are dramatic things that are in here, great conservative wins. And look, we're still talking to all of our members. I was talking to Mark Meadows yesterday. We've got a few Freedom Caucus members on our committee, and they're all voting with us to move this bill forward.
Okay,
so
now, two more quick things here. Yeah. Mitch McConnell was talking this morning in Washington, and apparently he said you will know the cost and the impact of this plan by Monday. Does that sound right to you?
I would expect by Monday or Tuesday, before this bill goes through the Budget Committee next week, we will have a CBO score. Now, keep in mind, CBO, they've said a lot of things that were wrong about Obamacare, but at the end of the day, we're not going to wait on them. We started moving this bill because we made a commitment to the American people that we're going to get this bill through the House and Senate and onto President Trump's desk where he's going to sign it.
And speaking of the president, I know this is going back and forth here. Last question. Did you say to your members last night, are you with President Trump or are you with Nancy Pelosi? Did that happen?
What I said was, Nancy Pelosi, by the way, is attacking our bill. President Trump said he wants the bill on his desk. And I said, at the end of the day, when this bill's on the House floor, we'll have all of our negotiations, but there's going to be a binary choice. You're going to either have the bill to gut Obamacare, and you're going to either vote with Nancy Pelosi against the bill, because she'll vote no, or you're going to do the thing that President Trump wants, and that's to vote yes so it gets onto his desk. And at the end of the day, members are going to have to make a choice. Do they want to vote with Nancy Pelosi, or do they want to support President Trump to get that bill to his desk?
We're
going to follow through on this promise and get it done.
Steve Scalise, thank you. You're heading back to that hearing now. We'll see how much longer it goes. Thank you for coming out and making time with us.
Great to be back
today.
with you, Bill.
Thanks, Shannon.
Well, budget cuts putting a huge strain on a major U.S. base. A Fox News exclusive coming up on how years of neglect could actually impact our safety. Also, the U.S. says all options are on the table when responding to North Korea's latest provocation. General Jack Keane says we are on a collision course with that rogue nation. He's next. But first, here's U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley.
We have not seen any goodwill at all coming from North Korea. I appreciate all of my counterparts wanting to talk about talks and negotiations. We are not dealing with a rational person.
U.S. Marines are on the ground in Syria. Fox News confirming they have arrived just outside the ISIS de facto capital of Raqqa. The Marines will reportedly build outposts there to support Syrian forces as they try to retake Raqqa from ISIS control. And as many as 1,000 U.S. troops could be sent to Kuwait. Be ready there for backup. General Jack Keane is a retired four-star Army general, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and a Fox News military analyst. General, good to see you today.
Good to see you, Shannon.
Okay, this definitely feels like a change in posture. You would expect that with the new administration. How much of this do you think is the president? How much of this is General Mattis? Or a combination of the two?
Well, it clearly started with the president. He asked for a plan in 30 days to defeat ISIS. He has a sense of urgency about it. I believe the Pentagon has presented multiple options to the president. The low end, 1,000 and 2,000 forces, additional U.S. commitment. On the high end, as high as 12,000, which would include conventional ground forces, artillery units. You're seeing one being deployed right now. Apache helicopters and additional special operation forces. The president's got to make a decision about all of that, and I'm certain that once that operation truly commences, he'll begin to talk about it to the American people, but likely not before that.
Well, there had been some criticism of President Obama that he'd sort of micromanaged and done small efforts, very targeted things in the region. Do you think this administration goes bigger and broader with some of these military moves?
I think so. I mean, clearly he's using the right terms. I want to defeat ISIS. I want to do it quickly. President Obama, since the invasion of Iraq that ISIS conducted in January of 2014, it took us 9 months to respond to that invasion, by the way. We have made 12 troop incremental changes from the summer of 2014 to the present. That is not the way to conduct a campaign. What the president has asked for as commander-in-chief, he's done absolutely the right thing, Shannon. He says, bring me a campaign plan to defeat ISIS, not just in Iraq and Syria, but defeat them entirely. And that is what military planning is truly all about.
Well, and you know, there's always this conversation when troops are sent closer to the front lines, U.S. troops, there's always a little bit of skittishness with the American people. It's something the last administration was incredibly sensitive to. But if you're going to defeat a group like ISIS, how involved will we have to get? Things like boots on the ground, a bigger commitment of personnel in that region.
Well, those are the choices the president's got to make. And I think he clearly knows the American people are supporting defeating ISIS and doing it as quickly as possible. After all, ISIS has radicalized people in the United States who have killed Americans, and they're obviously killing citizens in Europe, our fellow allies, and others in the region. So there's no doubt, I believe, that the American people will support the president's efforts. And he explains the situation, why we need X number of troops, why it's going to take this amount of time to do it, and gives them a sense of what the end state is. I think they'll support him.
All right, let's talk about North Korea. More ballistic missile launches there, more saber rattling. I want to play a little bit of what our ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, had to say about their behavior and our response.
We have to see some sort of positive action taken by North Korea before we can ever take them seriously. They've given us enough reason to think how irresponsible that they are, that we ever try and think that we're dealing with a rational person on this.
Okay, so not only dealing with North Korea, but China also in that region, who says that the military exercises, which we've done for decades with South Korea, those things are provoking North Korea. They're asking us to stop that. How much can we lean on China at all to be a help in dealing with North Korea? I know that you think a number of presidents have tried and not done so successfully. Will this be different?
Well, we've tried with 3 presidents, 20-plus years, to leverage China against North Korea's behavior to escalate their nuclear capability into a nuclear arsenal. And now they're building a weaponization capability to put nuclear weapons on intercontinental ballistic missiles to reach the United States. That's 20 years of failure. We have not curbed that behavior. All that said, I believe we are on a collision course here with North Korea, because we cannot permit them to weaponize an ICBM capable of reaching the United States. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, what does that mean? That means we would have to conduct a preemptive attack using cyber attack or a kinetic airstrike or missile strike to defeat that system before it would ever be launched. We need to make certain that the Chinese understand that we are willful here, and we intend to do this because we are not going to put Americans in danger. And once I think they begin to understand how serious we are, then possibly this time with this president, we may be able to finally curb North Korea's aggressive behavior. Mm-hmm. The alternative, Shannon, is if we do have to conduct a preemptive strike, North Korea could invade the South, and we have an all-out war. Or they can conduct artillery and rocket strikes on Seoul as well. So this is a dangerous situation.
It is, and Ambassador Haley says all options are on the table. General, thank you for breaking it down. Good to see you.
Good talking to you, Shannon.
9:30 in Washington. Moments from now on the Hill, a House committee starts a hearing on Russia's efforts to interfere with Western democracy. We'll show you what's happening inside that room. And James Comey's back in the spotlight. Some accuse the FBI director of using his power like none other. Is that the case today? And a former top intel official slamming WikiLeaks, saying the website is basically an asset to the Kremlin. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee addresses that next.
The idea that we are having these ongoing disclosures of national security and classified information should be something that everybody is outraged in this country. This is the kind of disclosure that undermines our country, our security, and our well-being.
President Trump will meet today with the head of Homeland Security, John Kelly. That happens today. Kelly says the White House already making progress on immigration, reporting the number of those illegally crossing the southern border has dropped 40% in the first month of Donald Trump's presidency. Wow, Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt looking for answers on that as to why in our West Coast newsroom. Jonathan.
Good morning, Bill. The Trump administration says these new figures show that its tough on immigration policies are working, and the raw figures in this new report do appear to back up that claim. Now, February usually sees an uptick in the number of illegal immigrants crossing the border from Mexico into the U.S., but this year there was a drop of 40% from the previous month, measured by the number of people apprehended at the border. In January, according to Customs and Border Protection, more than 31,000 illegal immigrants were stopped at the border. But in February, that figure dropped to just under 19,000. And administration officials say the sharp decline in apprehensions is a sign that far less people are trying to cross the border at the time of year that usually sees that uptick in the number. In a statement, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly said President Trump's policies are working, adding, quote, "The early results show that enforcement matters, deterrence matters, and that comprehensive immigration enforcement can make an impact." Now, the CBP report also says the fees charged by human smugglers, known as coyotes, are also increasing sharply, from $3,500 to $8,000 in some mountainous parts of the border. And CBP says that is another sign that new policies are making it harder for would-be illegal immigrants and their guides. Now, historically, a number of factors affect the flow of illegal immigrants across our southern border, including, of course, the economy and the weather. But experts generally agree U.S. immigration policies are the single biggest driving factor and deterrence. But those experts also point out that tough words have to be followed up by tough actions, Bill, or the flow might simply pick up again, as it did in the Reagan years after his 1986 amnesty.
Interesting developments. Thank you. Jonathan Hunt, following that from L.A. Thank you, sir.
House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing on Russia set to get underway at the top of the hour. It comes as Washington grapples with the fallout over the latest WikiLeaks dump. Investigators suspect an agency contractor may have stolen what are alleged to be sensitive CIA documents. But some say there is reason to believe Moscow had a hand in this as well.
I don't know that the Russians actually committed the theft. This may be what WikiLeaks said it was, an insider. But with regard to the timing, I mean, look, I'm now pretty close to the position that WikiLeaks is acting as an arm, as an agent of the Russian Federation.
Let's bring in Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor and a Fox News contributor. Governor, good to see you today.
Good morning.
All right, I want to talk about the impact on our intelligence community when things like this happen. A lot of folks within the agency have been, the various agencies have been kind of talking about morale has been battered a bit. Now they're in the spotlight again, the CIA having to say we're not using this stuff on Americans, it's the stuff we use on bad guys. But it's yet another very public discussion about some things they probably wanted to keep private.
Well, it certainly is, but there are some things that we need to know about as American citizens, particularly if it potentially violates every constitutional right that Americans have. If our government is spying on us, if our government is holding back secrets about us and stealing things from us in the way of information, then something is rotten, not just in Denmark, it's rotten in D.C., and we've got to get to the bottom of it, because otherwise we don't have this great republic that most of us believe that we have.